Hey, JB here, the Wolf of Wall Street in the Wolf's Den, with another awesome episode here of my podcast series. I got a great guest today from India. Ready for this? He's the youngest billionaire in India. That means a lot, by the way. There's not that many billionaires in India. He's 34 years old. He's made a fortune in the markets, not from trading, but from starting a platform very similar to Robinhood. So he's the sort of Robinhood of India, and he's making tons of money, and he has a lot to say about the economy, both in India and the world. He's got great insights. This is definitely going to be intriguing. We talk a lot about belief systems, what separates the rich and the poor, and also, is India a place you want to be investing in? How do you capitalize on the 1.5 billion people there? What a market that's going to be. So his name is Nikhil Kamath, and we're going to speak to him right after this message from our sponsor. Stay tuned. It's going to be unbelievable. All right, guys, today I want to talk about something important to me, and you know this is true when you hear it. If you've been following me for a while, you know I love to help people reach success and fulfillment, right? Some of you need to hear this. The only thing standing between you and your goals is the bullshit story you keep telling yourself as to why you can't achieve it. And for some of you, and this was me at one point, by the way, and you all know this is true, what's standing your inevitable path to success is substance abuse. Trust me, I know it's hard. Making a commitment to sobriety shouldn't have to mean sacrificing the comfortable lifestyle you've come to know. Why not experience the best of both worlds? If you're ready to take part in a world-class treatment program and prefer the luxury of a beautifully appointed residential villa or a mansion in sunny South Florida, it's time to consider United Recovery Project. Through both an expansive alumni network offering support and a staff with firsthand personal experience with addiction, you'll be supported by those who know exactly what you're going through and how to best help. United Recovery Project works with most major health insurance plans and also providers to help cover the costs of your addiction treatment. So if you or your loved one is suffering from substance addiction, go to urphelp.com and begin the road to recovery today. That's urphelp.com. Okay, Nikhil, nice to meet you. How are you this morning? Everything good?
Good. How are you doing, Jordan?
I'm doing phenomenal. So listen, you are India's youngest billionaire, right?
Yeah, apparently.
You are. How many billions is it? You have? Is it 1 billion? Is it 2 billion? Is it 10? What's the count on billions right now?
Jordan, it's how you value startups in our ecosystem is a multiple of the profits we make. So that comes up to a fairly exaggerated number. For all practical, pragmatic terms, I don't think the billionaire tag is, it really doesn't mean that I have billions of dollars.
Sure, I understand. So in other words, what you're saying is the overall long-term asset value is over $1 billion if you extrapolated the cash flows. But in terms of today's prices, it doesn't really matter whether you're a billionaire or not. You're fucking rich and you're young and you started with nothing, right? You started with literally working for $10 a month, was it, and a call center?
Yeah, I think like $100. Yeah,
$100 a month. Okay, that sounds a bit more reasonable. So $100 a month. And how old were you then? At 18 years old, you were working in a call center?
About 17.
17.
Yeah.
Just first, let's very quickly do a big overview here, a broad overview of how you go from making $10 and $100 a month to being one of the richest young people in India. How does that happen in 12 years or so? Let's go through the process. How does it go down?
Yeah, so it's been about 17 years. I'm 34 today. Back when I used to work in a call center, when I began, I was 17. A lot of getting lucky, being in the right time at the right place. The one constant throughout this journey has been the stock market. I started trading when I started working at a call center. And trading has really done well and has led to broking and asset management and everything else that we do today.
So what you first started trading for your own account when you were 17 years old?
Yeah.
One of the most famous money managers in all of India, I mean, his name is Mati, right? Do you know him? Very famous guy. He ran Reliance's portfolio for many years. He's known as like the 10 bagger guy or the multi-bagger man or something in India. Do you know him?
No, I do not know him. There are quite a few. Yeah, you would be surprised. India is a large market.
I've had a relationship with him for a while, and what he said to me is that in India, it's very important that when you invest in companies, you also have an active eye on watching the management because there's a lot of mismanagement in these companies. So it's not just about investing blindly in companies, it's also really being careful that the management is doing the right thing, the right people are in place. Is that true?
Yeah, I would say it was more true back in the day, but compliance and regulation has caught up to a great degree. And especially if you're buying large cap companies in India today, you don't have to worry too much about management and governance per se.
Did you make your money by starting? Is it a hedge fund deal? Is that where you made your money? So you were able to get other people to give you money, and then you made money on that money, and that's how you got rich?
No, we did very well on broking. We started a broking company about 11 years ago, much like you have Robinhood in America.
Okay.
So we started that in India about 11 years ago, discount broker, simplified the ecosystem, and that company has scaled a lot. So it's the largest broker in India today.
How many users do you have on the platform?
We're about 5 million.
5 million. Wow, it's a lot of users. You have 5 million users, and is it mostly investing in Indian stocks or stocks from all over the world?
Mostly Indian stocks. So the one common thing you will notice about Southeast Asian economies here is we all have capital controls. A citizen of India is only allowed to invest about 250,000 US dollars a year outside of India. And when it comes to assets under management, the large pools typically belong to the ultra HNI clientele, and they can't themselves invest more than 250K a year abroad.
That doesn't apply though to some of the really massive families in India. Like for example, you have a company, one of the big families owns a large steel company that's sort of a international conglomerate, right?
It applies to everybody as an individual. If me as an individual wants to invest in America today, I can't do more than 250K a year. But what many Indians typically do is, they have a family of 4 or 5, so that 250K becomes $1 million. Now, as a company, when you're investing, you can go to the central bank here. We call them the Reserve Bank of India. You take permission. We have something called ODI. It's a route or a vehicle in which you can invest money abroad, but it's corporate
I
money,
see.
not personal.
I got it. So you form a corporation basically, and through your company, you can make investments abroad and stuff like that. Is that a very common thing in India that wealthy people do?
Yeah. There are some regulations around it. You can't just form a company today. You will have to be, in a regulated sector for a certain amount of time before ODI is approved and stuff like that. But the large ticket investments you're talking about are probably done through the ODI route.
Got it. Now, um, about I think it was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, your country went through a complete demonetization, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
So tell me how that worked. So I think the issue with India was that it was very much a cash economy where people kept their money outside the traditional banking system in their mattresses. Lots of things were done with bribery and a lot of graft involved. So the president, very smart guy, is it Modi, I think, or Modi?
Yeah. The Prime
Right?
Minister, Narendra Modi.
Yeah, Prime Minister, right? He actually recalled all the money, and essentially, if you didn't turn your money back in for new money, your money became worthless, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So tell me
Uh,
about that process and how that impacted the economy. What was that like going through that?
sure. So the issue began much earlier. In the 70s and 80s, there used to be a point of time when the tax rates in India had gone up to as high as 90%. We were in some form of civil emergency at that point. What happens when you tax people of the country at 90%? Nobody wants to formally declare any income. That kind of seeded the alternative gray sector or the black money economy in the country. And I think in many ways, those patterns that we created then have continued to exist up until today. So Modi, when he came into power very early, so we have two large parties here in India. One is called the BJP, to which Modi belongs. The other is the Congress. the Congress was ruling up until 2014 when BJP came into power. This was one of the first things he did. Very hard to weigh in on that and figure if it worked well for us or it did not. Uh, Almost about 98, 99% of the money came back into the system. Uh, so by that, do you come to the conclusion that we only have 1 or 2% of our economy in cash? The black economy? Probably not. I think people found ways and means of figuring out how to convert their black money into legally tax paid money. But I think we're still kind of like facing the long term repercussions of what was done then. We have seen many forms of economic slowdown on the ground ever since demonetization happened. I don't know if it achieved all that it was trying to achieve. There are a lot of critics of it who say it was not executed in the manner that it could have been executed.
I think the idea was that they gave an amnesty to people that if you brought your money back into the system within a certain period of time, then you would not be looked at or thrown into jail for not declaring taxes. Was that the story, pretty much?
Yeah, so they did allow for people to come in and file back taxes before they announced demonetization. There was no paying back taxes once demon was announced, but people still found alternate ways of converting their black money into white.
Had they through other people giving money to different people, and like I know people were showing up with like lots of people like didn't have money. They would spread your money out to lots of people, right? Was that how it was being done?
Yeah, see, at the end of the day, the difference between black money and white legal money is taxation, right? So once you pay tax on it, it is legal money. So people figured out smarter ways to pay the lowest amount of tax that they could, but paying 10, 20% tax, many people converted their black money into white money.
Got it. And what about the impact of cryptocurrency in India? Is it generally not allowed in India? What's the stance of the government there?
Well, the government came out a certain time ago, a couple of years ago, and they mandated the banks to not facilitate any crypto transactions. The crypto lobby in turn got a stay on that order, and cryptos have been functioning in India, but I would say they're not in the true sense of the word legal. They operate in the gray areas. Most banks, even today, do not really deal with cryptos. Cryptos, like we have seen in the rest of the world, a lot of interest around them right now. People will figure out ways in which they can invest in it. But like America, I think our government realizes that it takes away power from the government and central bank in India. And I don't think they would be the biggest proponent, or they would champion the cause of Indians investing in crypto too much.
Yeah. My belief always was, especially in the United States, that they would never allow for cryptocurrency to gain a foothold because it just makes no sense. Like that, the government would want this. Like they should absolutely hate any idea of an alternative currency or a store of value, even that can't be easily regulated, taxed, or controlled, and is so easily used to launder money. Now, the truth is, while Bitcoin itself isn't great for laundering money, it's a hell of a lot better than bags of cash. So and there are other coins on the blockchain that are privacy coins that are perfect for laundering money. So I was very surprised. But for some reason, what's happened is the government has allowed it to not only flourish, but they've actually embraced it pretty much, where it's now become, integrated into the financial system more and more every single day. So it's almost like at this point, it seems to be somewhat of a freight train out of control. It's going down the track, and there's massive fraud and manipulation. I mean, like, it's unbelievable, like what's happening right now, but the government just doesn't seem to care, which is pretty shocking to me. But that being said, when there are very little rules around something, there's a lot of money you could make if you know how to play the game the right way. So in India, you're looked at as a massive success story. Do people look at you like you're a young guy, you come from nothing, right? And you've now achieved massive success. What does that, stand for in India? Do you have a lot of young people following you? Do you have a big social media footprint?
Well, not very large, really. I'm not the most active person on social media, but so India is strange that way. We are an open economy and we encourage capitalism in its truest sense, but we are not as capitalistic as America is. In America, if you're a young guy who does very well, if you flaunt that wealth, or if you come to be looked upon as someone who's enjoying the money that he has earned, it would be something that people would aspire to be. In India, at a certain point, you cross that threshold where people no longer like you for having a lot of money, but you can very easily flirt with that line where hoarding enormous wealth is looked down upon. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think in the world we live in today, the wealth disparity has grown to such a proportion, and uh, like we used to have the caste system in India, right? Like we used to have races across the world. I think there is a new race or a new caste system which is being formed around the wealthy, the haves and the have-nots. It is progressively becoming harder somebody who is born with nothing to make it in the world that we live today. Be it by virtue of not having the same amount of access to education, not having the investable capital that some other people might have. So in India, that is a problem. So it is good while you're aspiring to be wealthy, but you never want to go to that point where you're considered very wealthy. That is
Interesting.
not
Interesting.
favorable. Yeah.
So, are you saying that you think it's harder today in the world to get rich if you don't have money to start or not born into the right family? Or are you saying in India it's more difficult?
I would say in the world, I think it's progressively getting harder. Yeah,
Okay.
I think as that wealth disparity curve increases, let's say 1,000 people in America today who own as much as a vast majority of America. When that 1,000 becomes 500, and if 100 people own 97% of America, logically wage growth does not keep up with the growth in assets. Like if you were to invest $100, say somebody, a person X, has $100 worth of savings. If he invests it in asset classes which are returning him 5, 6, 7, 8%, but wage growth in the country at the same time is below 5, 6, and 7%, the people who are wealthy today, by definition, will continue to be wealthier in the future. They will be outliers, there will be people in between who suddenly get lucky or do something right at the right time and do very well. But as long as wage growth does not match up with the growth of investable capital, I think that wealth disparity will continue to grow.
Yeah, I have a different view on that. So I'll tell you, see, I think that you're right that the disparity between the ultra wealthy at the very tippy top and everyone else has widened dramatically, and it's not a healthy good thing, and there's no reason for it. It doesn't serve anybody. No one deserves to be that wealthy. It doesn't matter to them. It's idiotic at a certain point. And I never begrudge anybody making money, but why would someone need to have $150 billion when $5 billion is more? Is you could never spend in 10 lifetimes? It doesn't matter. So obviously, is a reflection of some inefficiency or something wrong in the system. I agree with that. What I don't agree with though is that I think it's easier now than ever in the world for a motivated person that wants to be an entrepreneur and learns the game of entrepreneurship and trading and investment. I think it's easier now to get rich than ever. I think what you're talking about is people who are actually working for a wage, people that are out there in normal everyday jobs. The backbone of every economy is average everyday people, and those people, it's getting more and more difficult to get ahead. A dollar buys 50 cents worth, it seems like. And, they say inflation's not going up, but you look at certain things, you're saying, well, that doesn't really match up with what I'm seeing here when real estate prices are soaring, automobile prices are soaring, and they say that there is no inflation. It doesn't match up, right? But I do think that there's been a paradigm shift in how every good and service is being sold now, and it's been accelerated by the pandemic, where there's advantages to the small, nimble entrepreneur to get into an online business, make money, operate virtually without having that capital intensive situation where there's lots of overhead and big operations. So I think the wealth gap is more about like these ultra rich people at the top and then the average everyday worker. I really truly believe that any person, whether they're in India or in China, the United States, England, doesn't matter where, South America, if they want to get rich right now, I think it's easier than ever if you have that much drive. What say you about that?
I think the internet has been a big leveling factor. The internet has kind of allowed for people who create a product or service not with too much capital, but if the idea works, they can scale very quickly. So I would agree with you partly there. I would say by virtue of the internet and access to a large audience, which people did not have earlier, 50 years ago, if you built something and it worked, you needed to go build it, replicate it somewhere else for you to sell the product there. The internet has been a bridge in many ways. But I still think, outside of exceptions, let's say India has 100,000 exceptions, right? But if I were to generalize and talk about 1.4 billion people, it would be fair to estimate that the rich would continue to, get richer and the poor will get poorer if the system continues to work in the same way that it does today.
Yeah, I guess I just what I'm saying is I think that the reason people are poor, generally speaking, is not so much that they don't have access to the same education and the same opportunities. I believe it's part of it, but I believe that it's more about they don't see the opportunity. See, I think what drove me to success was that I was not rich. I wasn't poor. I was low. We say in America, lower middle or middle class. Like my parents had enough money. We had everything we needed, but not what we wanted. However, 5 miles away, I could see and drive through beautiful neighborhoods and see a life that I wanted, or would look on TV and see shows like Dynasty and Dallas and all these wealthy people with beautiful women and all this, right? So it creates this aspiration. And I think for me, it was about a belief system that said, there's nothing that is out there that's out of my reach. It's possible that I can get there. Now, clearly, the people that are born into massive poverty, there's huge disadvantages. So I'm not saying that. Of course, I agree with you there. There's a huge disadvantage. But I just don't think the way out of poverty is through incremental wage growth. I don't think that's possible. Like that, if wages were 10% higher and capital costs were 5% lower, that it would matter very much to moving massive numbers of people out of poverty. I believe what moves people out of poverty is things like education and opening their eyes to the opportunities that exists around them. Because I believe any human being that wants to work hard, that has their eyes open, so to speak, and has the basic education. When did you drop out of school? Like 14 or something, right? You didn't go to college, right?
Yeah, I didn't even finish high school.
Right, you didn't finish high school. Well, you're a very smart guy. I could tell by speaking to you. You're an educated guy without a formal education. You're very educated. But something happened in your life. There's something that happened that opened your eyes and gave you a desire to go out there and achieve wealth. So what was that? What was it in you? With me, I'll tell you, it was growing up in a neighborhood. We didn't have a lot of money, but we had enough. We had good education, and I saw the rich people and wanted that life. What was it for you?
Well, I think it's much of the same. I think we all kind of filter what we actually think and, we cover it with other things which sound better. But deep down, it's greed, right? For all of us. I think not having enough and wanting more, all of the drive that 9 out of 10 people have is driven by greed. Humans, I think we've evolved in a manner where you put us amongst a peer group, we will always want to have more than the person next to us. We have to feel relatively superior. Your peer group was definitely different. Mine was different. But I think the intention very much was the same, to have more than your peer group.
All right, want to grow your business, diversify your content? You're not going to find a better tool out there than Melon for your live streaming needs. Blazing fast response time, low CPU usage, all available right in your browser. Go to melonapp.com/wolf and start streaming today. If you look at India right now, what's the problem there? Like what? Now, I'm not saying that it's a problem country. I think India's got a very bright future, in fact. But what do you think the problems are there that stop more people from rising up out of the muck and mire of poverty into wealth and success? Is it a lack of belief? Is it an education issue? Is it access to capital? What do you think it is? Is it mindset?
Well, I think all of the above, but also you have to kind of like pay heed to the scale of India. India has a lot of people, 1.5 billion people. Traditionally, over the last 50 years, we have grown at a pace which is significant compared to, our peers here in Asia or the West for that matter. But to take 1.5 billion people and provide education for them, provide better infrastructure for them, or provide enough opportunities for them is not easy. I don't think it comes down to one government or a certain kind of policy making. I think it will come down to many decades before we get to that point where, we create that ecosystem where people can thrive. There are many things I think should change personally. For example, inheritance taxes in America. We don't have that in India. I feel like the top 1% of our country has to pay a certain amount of tax when they leave it to their kids. And that money should go towards bettering the infrastructure, the educational system, many of the cardinal systems which are required to create that ecosystem. There are many leakages in terms of governance which need to be curtailed. We need to become more open and freer as an economy. We need to focus on the right issues, and right now the focus seems to be on things which does not really matter.
For example?
I think a lot goes on in India around winning an election, and much lesser goes on around
keeping the promises you made to win the election.
Yeah. I think
that's the same thing everywhere. Well, that's in one way with the communists, where China has it right. I mean, China has a very brutally efficient system in the sense that there's the person in power, and they do what they want to do, and they do what they think is best for the country. Hopefully, I think that Yi is actually a really good leader for China in the sense that. He's certainly making moves that are creating short-term success and paving the way for massive long-term growth and become the world's largest economy. And I wonder why India doesn't move in that same direction. Like I look at India, I look at China, and it would seem to be that the parallels are almost uncanny, that in the sense that you have these, massive population, educated population. So let's just say, for example, when we look at China, I think the way many analysts look at China is they divide it up and they sort of carve out this large group of people that are sort of, you would say they're in poverty, and it's a very large amount of people there, probably north of what? I don't want to say the wrong number. It could be maybe, we used to say 1 billion people. Maybe it's less now. I'm not really sure. But whatever that number exactly is, that's sort of a group that you look at, okay, that's off to the side now. Let's look at 500 or 700 million people that are in the economy contributing, rich, middle class, and lower middle class, and poor, but still in the economy making a good living wage and trying to move up and have their children live better lives than they did, right? So I look at India the same way. So imagine we have, I guess and again, I don't want to offend anybody here by using the wrong word, but I think, I know from the movies and from reading that you had this group of people that were called the untouchables, right? That were and I've been to India, just so you know. I've been to India, and I was shocked at how many fans that I have in India. I have a very large fan base. I love Indians. I want to go there and do a big tour when all this pandemic shit is behind us. But I also walked through some of the slum areas there. It's shocking, absolutely shocking, especially because, like, I've done that in South Africa too. I've done charity work in the slums. But the difference in South Africa and India is that I was staying in the Four Seasons Hotel in Mumbai, and literally outside my window was a million people in like a square half a mile. So it's like the poor are right there next to the rich. Where in South Africa, they're isolated. They're in you understand, like they have different areas where the people who are really poor live. So what is that like for you as a wealthy person? To kind of, I guess that you face that every day, right? That the poor people are not even poor, but just like, beyond poor, or in poverty. How does that feel? How does that work?
So I think that's in many ways an optical illusion in India. These people you see in the slums are not necessarily poor. I don't know which particular slum in Mumbai you were around, but in many cases, these people are, fairly wealthy. Uh, in a lot of cases, a lot of the slum dwellers have homes that have been provided by the government, and they choose to retain the home they have in the slum and rent out the new house that they have. It's a very complex thing. It's a product of how highly inflated real estate is in Bombay. For the infrastructure, for what Bombay or Mumbai has to offer today, real estate prices are ridiculous there. It's comparable. It's probably today more expensive than New York. So a guy who has, who's probably earning $10,000-$20,000 a year, which is a lot of money in Bombay, will still find it very hard to, get great housing in Bombay. The slum problem is kind of like limited to one or two pockets of India. There might be, huge slums in Bombay. There might be a couple in other large metropolitan cities. But that problem is going away. I think that is something that the government can solve easily. Low cost housing coming up on the periphery of cities to a large extent will solve that issue. China urbanized very quickly. I don't know if urbanization is a good thing or a bad thing, but we followed in the path of China and urbanized and tried to replicate what they did as quickly as we could. What the pandemic has taught us is all these people working online, working from home. We've come to the realization that this trend is not temporary, but here to stay. Like a company like ours, for example, I don't think we have a couple of thousand people here in Bangalore. I don't think we're ever going back to our offices. When we don't go back to our offices, you can work out of a tier 2 town, a tier 3 town. You can work out of a beach in India. That will organically reduce the
yeah. It's de-urban. It's really, I'm sorry, it's like de-urbanization. It's funny, like it's the exact opposite of what happened as like in the 1800s, as technology came, the industrial revolution, you came into the cities to get jobs and work, and now with technology, it's everyone can go back. It's really interesting. It's a good point.
Yeah, and I think that's going to happen. I see it happening with my immediate circle, and when that becomes really popular, I think the land prices, real estate, which I said is extremely inflated in these tiny pockets like Mumbai, will see a correction. When that does happen, it will become a lot simpler to be able to provide, alternative housing for these slum dwellers of today. So I don't think the slums are a big issue. I think even if you were to look at statistics and say what percentage of Bombay is living in a slum, for example, that number has progressively been coming down. And I think that will get expedited, and slums will be a thing of the past very soon. Also, the population issue, like people talk about India and our burgeoning population. That no longer really is the case. Like China has a population issue where, their one child policy has kind of backfired. They've gone back to people and they're asking people, in fact, to have more kids. So the replenishment rate to retain a population at where it is today, they say is about 2.1, 2.15. So every couple in the country gives birth to 2.1 kids. The population remains constant. So the last census, which happened in India a few months ago, in the first 17 states, 17 large states that we measured, the replenishment rate has gone down below 2.15. So population, doubling in 50 years, that narrative no longer holds true. For India, for China, we, like the West, like Singapore, like South Korea, will see the problem of a, a really wide section of society which is aging, which is a big hindrance on the economy. That will be followed by depopulation of one way or another, where the population of the country will actually decrease.
Mm. And what impact is Corona having on your country now? Like I hear, like I don't believe a lot of what I read in the newspaper, but according to the U.S. news agencies, India is an absolute disaster right now. Like where like the
Yeah.
country is like in shambles with coronavirus. Is that true?
Well, so I'll tell you three perspectives on this. The Indian media is sugarcoating what is actually happening. The issue is a lot starker than we are saying it is. I think the foreign media is exaggerating what is happening on the ground. So we lie somewhere in between what the domestic media in India is saying and what Western media is saying. But it is bad right now.
And they're saying that people are running out of oxygen in
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
hospital. It's true, huh?
It is true. Yeah. It is true. It is true. Again, it comes down to population.
And vaccinations. None of it. I guess you've been vaccinated. Have you been vaccinated?
I haven't. So India has vaccinated people who are above the age of 45, uh, a certain portion of that population. They've vaccinated the frontline workers. Vaccination for people in the age group of 18 to 45 has just begun.
Mm, okay. So do you see that you're about to come out of the pandemic? You think the worst is behind you or in front of you?
Well, I don't think so. I think we'll have a third wave, much like the Western economies did. We are in some sort of a lockdown across the country today. When things do open up, the cases will rise again. Hopefully, we get our act together and vaccinate enough people before the third wave hits us. But I don't think we're out of the woods just yet. I think this is here to stay, for a long time.
What advice would you give to a young man in India or a woman in India right now? And is women have the same opportunities as men now in India? Or is it still men are leading in business? Or women out there too now?
Well, the government made it mandatory for every corporation's board to have female representation. So we all need to have one female member. But demographically, we're not doing well there. The number of women in the workforce has continued to dwindle, and we're below 20% right now. The funny thing with that is that trend is not isolated to India alone. If you look at the entire world, you add the developed economies, the number of women in the workforce has been constantly dropping. I think it's like a U curve in a way. Like even in America, for example, women working was not really a thing. When you go back to the 20s, 30s, and 40s, only later in the 60s, more women started participating in the workforce, and you saw a curve which grew exponentially, and you're dwindling as well. But in India, I think that number is abysmally low at 20 and under 20% and a downward graph. Uh, it doesn't augur well for us.
Do you think it's going to improve or can keep dwindling? You think is it a lost cause? It sounds like, or are there is there a movement in the country right now for first of all, is there equal rights? Is there a Me Too movement in India? Does it exist or no?
Yeah, yeah, it does. Now,
It
there is
does
a
exist.
lot being done towards equality and giving equal rights to men and women, and to a large extent, I think we've done well there. The rights are very similar, but to improve participation of women in the workforce, I think culturally we have to change a lot. We are still, in many ways, households which are run by a patriarch. I'm not adding, the cosmopolitan centers of India, but India is wide and vast, and it goes into tier two and tier three towns across the country. So a lot has to change there, and culturally, I think we have to change and evolve.
Is the caste system still anything in place there or just non-existent?
Well, it is, and to a certain extent, it is. Political parties in India typically seek favor with one caste or another. It might not hold true at a national level, but when you break it down state-wise, often you will find the leader of a certain state has the backing of a certain caste in that state, which is a majority there. Like I said, I mean, I think caste systems exist across the world. I think if you take America, for example, you had big issues with the caste system. You had the Confederates and the Union, and I would call it more a race issue than a caste issue. But what you call a race issue for us is a caste issue. I think the
Got
new
it.
race issue and caste issue across the world will be defined by wealth and opportunity of tomorrow. And I think we're walking towards that. We're all becoming less religious. The same is happening in India. I mean, if you look at how much money is going to the Vatican, to Mecca, to Hindu temples, to all of these organizations, you can equate how well a religion is doing by the amount of money that is going into them. And I think those numbers are dropping. I remember being in the Vatican a couple of years ago, and they were like, we have 40% lesser tourists this year than we had 5 years ago. People are just not as interested as they were with religion as they were 10 years ago. And I think the younger generation is less keen and less likely to be as religious as the previous generation.
My sense is that as an outsider U.S. citizen, that there would be huge opportunity to invest in India. Is that true? You think it's a good place to invest for foreigners, or is it problematic still?
No, I think it's a great place for foreigners. The one thing you have going for you is a government which really encourages foreign investment into the country. So you have better taxation. I'll give you an example. Me as an Indian investing in India will have to pay a higher rate of tax than if Jordan wants to invest into India and make the same amount of profit. Now, there's plenty of opportunity. It's a very underpenetrated market. Like the market I operate on, stock broking, only about 2% of our country has either direct or indirect access to financial markets. 2% out of the 1.4 billion people in the country. That same number in America is probably 60, 70%. So the scope and the potential for growth is tremendous.
I would think that's a huge opportunity for your business to really essentially get people up to at least some level of financial sophistication that they'd feel comfortable to invest. Are you actively trying to do that? Is that part of your mission?
Yeah, education is a big part of our mission. We go out there and try to inform people and educate them on how to be better investors. And that in turn, we hope will yield more new, fresh people coming into the stock markets. Tell us a bit about you, Jordan. I mean, we've had plenty about me. I have watched the movie, and it is incredible. Which part of all that you have been through kind of resonates with you the most? When you look back at it all, which is that one defining point of your career?
I think the defining point in my life is what happened after I lost all my money. And was I going to give up, or let's just say, more, it was so easy to make money in the stock market. It's very easy to make money doing what I was doing. And what I was doing is not even illegal. Like, in other words, I did some things that were illegal, but 99% of it wasn't illegal. And things that used to be illegal are now legal today. That's the crazy part. Like everyone's doing this stuff in crypto. That's that's what I was doing, but with stocks, and crypto's not regulated, so it's legal, right? But the biggest transitional point in my life was when I wrote the book, The Wolf of Wall Street. And I got a chance to really look back at my whole life in a very, meta way, where you're writing about yourself. And I wrote the book in a very detailed way, and I really, pay attention to every scene and describing locations and stuff, which is why it was very cinematic. When people read it, they felt like they could see the action, and why it was picked up for a movie, and why Leo did such a great job with it. But in that process, it changed me. it changed me really back into the person I originally was when I went out into the world to make money before I got caught up in the greed and all the, insanity with drugs and, chasing wealth. And I still love money and I make a lot of it. But that was a major defining point in my life. And when I became famous the second time around, it was with the understanding that I would never do anything again to make money that would not at least give people more value on the other side. And I think that's the one thing in my life that really I think is the greatest message and lesson for people, is that you don't have to fuck people to get rich. You just don't. I make a lot of money right now, and I'm making more and more every year. But everyone loves me. I have no enemies. Everyone that buys something from me, they love the products. When they hire me to speak, they're happy they did. When I invest in companies or people give me stakes in companies, I give back far more. So it's a mindset and methodology I have about going through life where I'm not looking to get away with something. I'm not looking to make money without giving value to people. And I think that's the greatest lesson. Is I had this almost flawed notion of capitalism. So at the end of the day, what is a business? What's the function of a business? The function of a business is to deliver value in a cost-effective way. So you have something of value, right? And then you need to essentially deliver that value. It solves a problem for people, and you could deliver that value to solve this problem. But if delivering it and manufacturing the solution costs you more than to market it and deliver it, you're not making money. So like the business is the way you deliver value in a cost-effective way economically, so there's a profit. But at the heart of it is value. You're delivering value. And that's a sustainable long-term way to make money. And that's something I didn't look at as a young guy. I was like, business is to make money and get rich. Now, I'm not saying you don't go into business to get rich, but it's a byproduct of delivering value. That's the biggest shift. And I think if people really understood that, it would help them make decisions that were more aligned with getting them rich even quicker. In other words, it makes it easier to make money when you realize what you're doing, what your goal is. So I think that's the one thing that maybe doesn't come through so much in the movie, comes through a lot more in the book. But if anything, it comes through mostly by my life, the way it is today. People say, how did you come back from that and your reputation? And the answer is slowly but surely, one step at a time, every single day, where they're calling you a crook and a cheat and a liar for many years. And then suddenly you start wearing them down. They're like, wow, and they realize just through good work after good work, you know what I mean? And next thing you know, the story starts to change. And then you start to say, oh, wow, if I do more of that, and you start to actively intercede on that. So there's no reason why you can't make even more money and get even richer, but not screw people at the same time. That's the lesson I think of my life. And I think why people love the story so much is that intuitively they know that, they get that, they see what I'm doing now, and they're like, wow, you look, you can Google me, and anything that's bad is always about, and 32 years ago, it's never like, in last week he screwed someone. It's always, so I think that's a very inspiring thing. I believe that no matter where you are in life, whether you're living in India, whether you're living in Pakistan, whether you're living in England, Asia, South America, if you want to get rich, and you're willing to do the work, and you're willing to take some risks, and you're willing to educate yourself, learn the things you need to learn, right? Make the relationships you need to make, then there is no way that you can't get rich in this world if that's your true desire and you're willing to do the work. So that, I think, is really what it's all about.
What is the one differentiator, do you think? Like, if there were 5 people trying to get rich, and one makes it, and you had to associate a trait with that person, what one thing?
Self-belief. At the end of the day, it's self-belief. I won't even waste my time asking you the question that if you lost all your money right now, would you get rich again in 5 years? I know the answer is yes. You're going to say, of course I'd be rich again in 5 years. It doesn't matter if you take all your money, right? Me too. It's a self-belief that you can achieve success, that I know in my heart of hearts that I possess all the tools, knowledge, strategy to get rich. What happens with most people is that they might say, yeah, I want to get rich. I'm going to go out and take action. I'm going to invest. I'm going to risk. But in their heart of hearts, when they play the movie out, they don't really believe. They can't see themselves succeeding. They don't believe they have what it takes. And because of that, their brain says, well, then why do all the work? Why should I take the risk? Why? It's better off to work for someone else. So I think that there's so much belief involved here. It's not a fear of failure. It's a lack of self-belief in your own success. If someone has that, I believe that drives them to success. What's the one defining factor in someone that you see?
I think persistence. People who do not give up. I think everybody fails, and you fail multiple times. People who don't get disheartened and continue to try often succeed.
Yeah, and I think that's a different side of that same coin, because in other words, it's part of the same thing. And I was originally going to say that, and I kind of went a level up from there, because I was like, of course that's true, and I'm the most persistent person. I fail all the time. It doesn't matter. I look at my failures as stepping stones to new successes, and I think that the reason, but when you dig deeper than that, what is it that allows someone to put up with a failure? They don't succeed, but they persist. Why? Because in their heart, they believe they're going to succeed. They have they know that at some point, if they work hard enough, they put in the effort, they're going to get the outcome. There are so many people out there that are walking around with a disempowered mindset that I'm just not meant to be rich, or I really, money is hard to make, and, I'm not good with money. It doesn't grow on trees. And, if you're born rich, or you're going to, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and the poor have children. So I think those sort of, and by the way, all those things are true. The thing is that the problem is that a lot of these things are true. The rich do get richer, the poor do get poorer, right? And, it's difficult to break out of the confines of poverty. It's harder without an education, but none of it matters. It's all true and it doesn't matter. It can all be overcome with massive persistence, massive self-belief, but you also have to be willing to do the work. Part of that, I believe, is learning how to close the deal. You need to be a closer. And this is what I teach people is, communication strategy. So I teach people entrepreneurship, but I also teach them communication. How do you close the deal? So I think without that one skill, it's very difficult to make money. It's almost it's an overarching skill set that paves the way. It's like the lubrication for everything else, because you're going to need to close people to get people to see. I don't just mean on a sale. I just mean to close people on your ideas, on believing in you and investing in you and working for you to help make your vision for the future a reality. So all of those things wrap up into one.
What were you thinking? What was your mindset like when you were on the top the first time around?
I never felt like I was on the top. I never really did. It was a very imbalanced time in my life. I made the money so fast, so quick, and I had this FBI agent chasing me for years and years and years. He's now a very good friend of mine, which is the irony. He's been on my podcast, and we speak all the time, and I have great respect for him. And he ended up doing me a big favor because he helped make me really famous, right? It wasn't easy along the way, but when I was super rich the first time around, I had all of these kids that I made rich too, thousands and thousands of them, right? And they're all calling me the king and the wolf and all this stuff. And I was dumb enough to believe it for a while when you're young. But now, as you get older, you have more perspective. I realize that it doesn't matter how much money you have. You are who you are. I always say I've been rich and I've been really, really happy. I've been rich and I've been really, really miserable. I've been poor and I've been really, really miserable. But never once, not in my entire life, have I been poor and happy. I can't be happy when I'm poor. Money doesn't buy happiness, but a lack of money is a passport to misery. So I say solve the money problem and then look for everything else on top of that. So that's my message. Let me ask you one thing, because we got to go here, but it's been a really great podcast. I want one more question. What would you do if you were an 18-year-old in India today? What's the quickest path to wealth, for all the people who use your platform, who are out there trying to, get ahead. What do you think's the quickest and, best way to get rich in India?
I would have to say I'm a bit jaded by the industry I work in, but I would have to say do something in fintech. I think the ecosystem is so large in India and it's only beginning to open up. This will be what the IT industry did to India in the 90s. I think fintech will be the next big thing and India will be at the epicenter. So definitely do something in fintech. I think it's quite important to, pick an industry where you have tailwind. You don't want to be swimming against the tide. And if you can pick an industry growing at 20-30% for the next decade, you're bound to do well if you do anything in that industry. It does not even matter what.
A rising tide lifts all ships, right?
Yeah, totally.
What we should do is when the pandemic is over, I should come to India. You should do a tour and we'll go around the country together and we'll get you 50 million new users. We'll go to every city. We'll do big educational events because I'm a fan. I'm gonna have a huge fan. We'll get everybody and all the young people in India to come to these events. We'll teach them about finance. They'll go on your platform. You'll help them get rich. That'll be a great thing for you,
I'd love that. I'd probably come to visit you wherever you are before that even. Love to hang out.
I'm here. Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I'm here in LA and Miami back and forth. But I'd love to have you as my guest at any time you want. Anyway, listen, I got a roll here. We have an hour, and we're at the hour mark right now. But you are awesome. You're a humble man. You're an inspiration, and I would suggest that anybody, whether you're in India or outside the United States, wherever you're listening to this, they should Google you, check out what you do. And follow some of the advice that you gave today because you're a sharp young guy and I wish you nothing but the best and I will see you again soon.
Thank you so much, Audie.
Thanks, my friend. Everyone share this with your friends. Everyone's got to see this is an inspirational story that people need to listen to. So everyone have a great day and we'll see you next time on The Wolf's Den. Take care.